people have to get back to work. Alan, thank you. I'm not used to other people getting standing ovations and getting applause lines on my line, but thank you. Term limits is one of the things that I ran on. I have to tell you, I am so honored to be here. I didn't know what to expect. But I have to tell you, Carolina and Alan, you have outdone yourself. I mean, you guys need to do more of this. This is unbelievable to have, what do we got, 260 people here having lunch today. I just don't think we can say too much about that. I know I'm in the right crowd when a Marine stands up and gets a standing ovation, right? I wasn't really nervous about giving another speech. I haven't given hundreds, I've given dozens, but until I saw Michael was going to be here. Now I got to really get on my game, or he'll call my cousin. But I just want to thank the chambers. This doesn't happen by accident, and it's important. What I say today is not that important, but what you do every day is important because it grows our community right here in Atlanta. You're the agents of entrepreneurship, innovation, and economic growth, not only for your community, your county, but our state. And we're not going to grow out of this recession unless we're all successful at those local levels. It's because of your hard work and the hard work of so many other people here in Georgia that for the 4th year in a row, Georgia has been named the best place in the country in which to do business. And I am extremely proud of that. And I'll let my colleagues from Texas and California and New York hear all about that too. I'm humbled to be the junior senator from Georgia. I take it very seriously. If any of you know me, this is not what my wife and I envisioned at all for this time of our life. But we felt a responsibility. I'm sobered by this reality. This is a heavy lift. We've got a real problem. But I'm optimistic at the same time about our future. But I will tell you, Alan had it right. I've had people tell me what to do all my life. I have been married, for 40 years. So this isn't that difficult. But it's a humbling experience. Every day I find a new way to be humble. This is a democracy. It's a representative democracy. About half the people vote one way and half the people vote the other. So I'm charged, along with Johnny, to represent everybody. So that means you have to listen and you have to apply that in trying to make these decisions. But it's humbling, and it starts right away. I remember when I was sworn in, and this is probably the most sobering moment of my life, standing outside the floor of the United States Senate, about to be sworn in. This is in January of 14. And my mom's standing there. She was 90. And some of you met my mom, and she thinks she's pretty hot. So I said, Mom, did you ever think in your wildest dream that you'd have a son about to be sworn in the United States Senate? She said, son, get over yourself. You were never in my wildest dream. You have to know my mother. True story. Today, I want to talk to you today about a moment of opportunity. To get there, though, I unfortunately have to talk about a moment of crisis. I believe this crisis is a moment of national emergency. I've said this before you, and I really believe this, even now after 2 years of being up there. Like I said, hold in one hand optimism and moment of opportunity. But to get there, it's a sobering crisis I'm going to describe to you today. It has 2 dimensions. First, the world has never been more dangerous than any time in my lifetime. And I've lived through the nuclear stalemate we had with the Soviet Union. When the Soviet Union Khrushchev said, took his shoe off and banged it on the table in the United Nations, we will bury you without firing a shot. Well, that didn't work out. And we're not going to roll over for this thug either. This economic crisis, though, is the first part of that. The world's more dangerous than it's ever been, partly because of our own intransigence. Our economic crisis is threatening peace in the world. Now, how do you make that connection? We have the weakest recovery since the Great Depression underway right now in the United States. We have the lowest workforce participation rate since 1978. New business startups are at an all-time low, dramatically down from 2007 and 8. Per capita GDP, this is without growth, without population growth. The real GDP growth in the last 8 years is 0.6%. And maybe worst of all, 4 million women have fallen into poverty in the last decade. The poverty rate today, even after all these decades of these sweeping, massive government programs, poverty rate today, after the Great Society was put in place in the 60s, and the world poverty was started, I'm embarrassed to tell you today, the poverty rate in the United States is exactly the same today as it was in the late 60s. That's unconscionable. We're the richest country in the history of the world, and the poverty rate today is exactly the same. What does that tell you? It tells you we have a problem, and here's the problem. The federal government, just in the last two presidents, by the way, this is not a partisan conversation. It never has been. I ran against Republicans as much as I did Democrats when I was running. I'm fed up with all of it. That's why I did a term limit bill. And the first week I was there, the very first thing we did, the very first day, we put a term limit bill. And I got a call that day. And I went in the next day to see Mitch McConnell, who's the leader of our party. And he said, I saw you put that bill in. I said, yes, sir, I did. And he said, well, he said, you do know I've been up here for 5 terms. I mean, that's kind of late in my 6th term. I said, yeah, but somebody's got to be responsible. Somebody's got to be responsible. We've got a problem. Under a Republican president for 8 years, under a Democratic president for 8 years, that's 16 years, the federal government grew from $2.4 trillion to over $3.9 trillion. So it was constant dollars. And the military is spending less now than we did in 2000. I'll get to that in a minute. You said, well, what is it? Well, we built up a $20 trillion debt, $4 trillion under Bush and $10 trillion under President Obama. $14 trillion since Bill Clinton had the last balanced budget in 2000. Here's how bad it is. Today, we spend $3.9 trillion. Only about 30% of that is discretionary. That means the other, we don't ever even talk about. That's mandatory. Social Security, Medicare, pension benefits, and the interest on the debt. Well, in the last 8 years, we've actually borrowed 35%. And by the way, this is where my wife really, if I'm sitting at a table, she starts kicking me under the table because I can bring any cocktail party to its knees, y'all. And this is what it is. It gets better. But we borrowed 35% of what we spent as a country the last 8 years. And right now, unless we do something, the last budget that we have coming into this year, over the next decade, we'll borrow another 35%. Right now, the Office of Management budget, his last year's budget coming into this year, shows that over the next 10 years, we'll add another $10 trillion to the $20 trillion. Guys, that cannot happen. I'm a business guy. I know the debt market. I know bond market. This will not happen. The world cannot absorb the United States with $30 trillion of debt. But here's the real punchline. With 35% being borrowed and 30% being discretionary, that means that every dollar we spend for our military, for our veterans, and for all domestic programs, every dime of that is borrowed money. That's the crisis. And that's what's got to get fixed. We're both guilty. You hear one party say, well, we have all the answers. They're wrong. We've all got to get together and solve this thing. Second, we have a global security crisis. As I said, I think the world's more dangerous than it's ever been, but here's how I measure that. When I grew up, the military had a one-in-one strategy. We held off one major symmetric threat and we had to defend against another. Well, today we have 4+1. Today we have the rise of Russia and China because of our pulling back in the last decade or so. We have the rise of ISIS. We have rogue nuclear nations like North Korea who could any day create a mistake that could cause a conflagration in that part of the world. We have Iran now with nuclear ambitions, but more importantly now, we have a new type of hybrid war called cyber warfare. We're still trying to decide what is an act of war in cyberspace. In addition to that, now what nobody's talking about, I'm on armed services, as Alan mentioned. And that's a sobering place to be today. Because I have to tell you, it's a very dangerous world. And we have, facing all of these things, is an arms race in space, and facing all of these challenges, we have today the smallest army since World War II, the smallest Navy since World War I, and the oldest and smallest Air Force. This just simply cannot be sustained. I believe, and it's backed up by Secretary of Defense Jim Mattis, and Secretary Mattis said recently in one of our hearings that the debt is the greatest threat to our national security. This debt and global security crisis together is the greatest challenge, I believe, of our time. Of course, there are other issues, but these are the issues that pull me into this nonsense to start with, and it keeps me up every night. It drives me to try to find common solutions. The idea that One side has a 100% solution, and the other side doesn't. It's just wrong. That's outdated. I'm looking for an 80% solution, just like you do every day in your business, and you know what I'm talking about. However, in the face of all that, I'm more optimistic today as I stand before you than any time in the last 2 years. I know more today about what's happening up there. I'm on the inside of this White House. I have influence there, and I'm going to use it. I'm not going to be bashful. We have an enormous moment of opportunity. This is what I'm trying to tell people, but we've got to face up to this crisis that we already know we have. We have an opportunity the next few years, I believe, to create an era for our children and our children's children that could make the last 70 years pale in comparison, economically, socially, politically. This could be a much safer world in 20 years if we do the right things in the next 4 or 5 years. I really believe that. This year, this president, when he got started, said he had 4 priorities. Job 1, of course, was getting the economy going, but within that, he said, look, repealing Obamacare, fixing the healthcare system is a major priority. Pushing back on regulations, confirming justice to the Supreme Court, and making our tax structure more competitive with the rest of the world. Those are really the top line items. There are a lot of other things that they're talking about. But if you listen to the rhetoric, those are the 4 priorities. It's very hard, but progress is being made. Today, as I stand before you, this president has already completed 13 of the 18 things he said he would do in the first 100 days. If you look at it, there's a lot of work to do. If you look at Obamacare, for example, something will be done. It hasn't been passed yet. The House is trying to figure out what they're going to bring to the Senate, and I believe that we will eventually find a solution there. It's going to take input from both sides to do that, though. And here's the problem. Somebody asked me this morning at breakfast, well, when are you going to do it? I said, well, we need to do it now, or we'll be forced to do it later. In Georgia alone, we have 96 counties out of 159 that only have one health care provider. One. And it's in jeopardy. In the individual market, we only have one provider. Around the country, there are 1,100 counties that only have one provider. And that provider is losing money. So you tell me how long they're going to stay in the individual market. They leave the individual market. Those people in those 96 counties in the individual market have no recourse. They have no place to go. So sooner or later, we're going to have to do that. We've actually also embarked on the boldest rollback of unnecessary federal regulations that I can remember, maybe since Ronald Reagan and maybe ever. This president reversed onerous rules with the help of Congress, such as Waters of the U.S., Clean Power Plant, and actually cleared the way for the Keystone Pipeline. In addition, Congress has already passed 13, and there are several others still waiting to be voted on, that reverse punitive overreaching regulations. This is through the Congressional Review Act, where we can go back in the last year and see these last late developing regulations. Even this past week, we saw history being made in the United States Senate. Even though one side tried to filibuster, first time in history, tried to filibuster a nominee to the Supreme Court, Republicans stood up, stood together, and confirmed Neil Gorsuch to the United States Supreme Court. You know, I don't really care which side you voted on. We got to have progress. It's very early. But here's why I'm so optimistic. People of the United States are pretty smart. They don't need politicians. They don't need media. They have an innate sense. You know what I'm talking about. You have it too. You know when something's going in the right direction, when it's going in the wrong direction. Well, here's what we have right now. Consumer confidence. We don't mess this up. We have a real turnaround in the making. Consumer confidence is bubbling up. I feel it. I see the data. I used to watch that a lot. It's the highest it's been since 2000. Small business owners are more optimistic than at any time since 2007. CEO confidence has never been higher in 13 years. Manufacturers are more optimistic than any time in the past 20 years. These are clear signs, I believe, that these people are anticipating something to get done in Washington. Well, it's hard to do that when you have a Senate and a House with this type of gridlock. Well, we have a person in the White House who's not afraid to go over there and break some eggs and actually break some heads and get some things done. And I think it's high time we do that. However, there's a lot of work to be done. It's just beginning. We're making progress, but we have so much more to be done in this turnaround. This crisis is all hands on deck. And if you don't believe me, just listen to the news any night, or listen to what's going on around the world. To get started, we have to focus on immediate priorities. The President's outlined, as I said, 4. We simply have to work together. And let me underscore that. We have to work together. When Republicans had the White House, the Senate, and the House between 2000 and 2006, they didn't fix the health care problems we had. Transportability, affordability, and accessibility. Well, Obamacare at least tried to fix it. Now, we all know that it did it in a way that is collapsing right now, and some of that was predicted by some of us. The government did such a good job with the VA and the post office that I was concerned with what they were going to do with health care. Some crowd that get a little bigger than that. I get it. We have to continue to get regulatory climate in balance, and this is why we have to compete with the rest of the world. Nobody wants no regulations, but we've got to be able to compete, and we're not competing today. We have to change this archaic and complex tax code, and we have to let our corporations become competitive with the rest of the world. This is not a competitive environment where you can just compete with people down the street. It's a global environment. You know exactly what I'm talking about. And lastly, we have to reinvest in the military. I'm sorry, but we're spending about somewhere between $100 and $200 billion less than our 30-year average, and really $100 billion less than the last time Secretary Gates in 2011 did an estimate on what we needed to run this military with all the threats that are out there in the real world. And that was done in 2011, before ISIS, before Russia went into Crimea, before China went into the South China Sea. We have to rebuild our infrastructure. You want to grow this economy, we have to rebuild the infrastructure. And we have to develop our workforce to match the real jobs that we produce today. These are immediate priorities. Our long-term priority, and it's going to take some time. If somebody tries to tell you that Congress is going to pass a budget this year that will balance in 10 years, you know somebody's lying to you. I'm a business guy. That cannot happen. It is that serious. Over the next 10 years, if we're going to have to borrow, if we're going to add $10 trillion to debt, that's $1.25 trillion every single year for the next 8 years. Well, I just told you, we only have about $350 billion that we can play with. If you're not going to cut the military, if you're not going to cut veterans, the only thing you got left is $350 billion inside the discretionary expenses of this country in order to tackle that. So what's got to happen? We will not solve this debt crisis unless until, here comes the fix. This is the good news. Because this is all within our grasp. We can do every single one of these. We will not solve the debt crisis unless and until we fix this budget process. It's broken. It's only worked 4 times in 42 years. We will not solve the debt crisis unless and until we grow the economy. We won't solve the debt crisis unless and until we save Social Security and Medicare, which both trust funds run out in 15 years. And finally, we will not solve the debt crisis unless and until we finally arrest the spiraling drive of healthcare costs. One side says, well, we'll just tax more. The other side says, well, we'll just cut expenses. Now we hear, well, you can grow your way out of here. Well, here's the reality. Not any one of those single things can solve this debt crisis. That's how late we've waited to deal with this. No single factor will save this or solve this debt crisis. My theory is you've got to have, and the math says you've got to do all of the above. To get these results, I'm convinced, finally, you know, America is always the best at working in a crisis. Think about it. You know, World War I, World War II, Korea, the Great Depression. Americans have always stood up in a moment of crisis. We're just not the best at recognizing we're in one. That's not a joke. I'm just saying we don't know. We're sitting today in the worst crisis in American history. And you've got fools like me beating their gums in front of you, using my advantage here, taking advantage of you to try to tell you how serious I think it is. I'm not a chicken little. I don't believe that we're not going to solve this, but I do believe we got to face up to it. I submit to you, it's time to put self-interest aside. I submit to you, it's time to put political interest aside. You thought you were going to get a nice, happy speech today, didn't you? It's time to put partisan interest aside. It's time to focus. I didn't run the United States Senate to deal with a broken system for a few years. I went up there to try to fix it from the inside. And we're doing things you'll never read about. We're trying to fix the budget process. We have Democrats and Republicans in my office. And we're going to end up changing the way we fund the federal government. We have to. It's a fraud right now today. The way forward is to focus on these priorities. It's not any more complicated than that. We just have to have a sense of urgency. And the problem is right now, guys, Alan got a nice applause on my line about term limits. And here's the reality. We've got 36 United States senators who've been elected office up there for more than 30 years. 60 have been in office for more than 20 years. The driving force in Washington, D.C. is how many people you have on your side of the water and how many people they have on their side of the water, so you have the vote majority. I'm telling you, that created this crisis we have today. In business, if you don't deliver results, you don't survive. That's not the way it works in Washington, and we got to change that. With an outsider business guy in the White House, I think we got somebody who's not a choir boy, but I think we got somebody that can stand up in Congress and actually get it. No debate on that, right? No, seriously, he doesn't claim to be. He doesn't claim to be. What he wants is results. I'm in the Oval Office with this guy. I'm listening. He's listening. I believe he's strong enough to force Congress to break through this nonsense and to get something done. We cannot waste this opportunity because of partisan politics, bitterness about election outcomes, or simply saying what's broken cannot be fixed. Too much is at stake. I still believe in America. And I think you do too. If you didn't, you wouldn't be here. I've got grandchildren now, and I got to tell you, you talk about children and children's children that Reagan talked about, that means a lot to me. And I believe that we have the greatest opportunity right now we've had in our history. The pastor said it best. He said, I knew David was going to be here, and we started praying. Let me tell you, a lot of you people are doing that today, and that means a lot. No country in the history of the world has ever been much better at doing what we've got to do. Winston Churchill once said, though, and this is where it is. This is a perfect quote for us right now. It's no use saying we're doing our best. You've got to succeed in doing what is necessary. Now think about the circumstances under which Winston Churchill made that statement. And imagine us today, and I'm going to tell you that what we're facing today is no less serious than what Winston Churchill was facing then. I mean that. From William Few, the first person in my seat in 1789, to Richard Russell, Zell Miller, Sam Nunn, Johnny Isakson, Paul Coverdale, Mac Mattingly, Saxby Chambliss, and so many others, Georgia has long had a proud tradition of statesmen who work together to focus on results. I started out by saying I'm humbled to have the opportunity to follow in their footsteps, to try to make a difference. Thank you for all you do for your communities, for Georgia, and for our country. I know we can get this done. We have to get this done. God bless you. God bless Georgia. God bless the United States of America. Thank you all.